Welcome back, guys. Today we will be explaining reasons you should never just hand over your ID to a police officer. Let's go. A police officer walks up to you on the sidewalk and says, "Hey, let me see your ID." No explanation, no crime mentioned, no emergency, just those words. A lot of people instantly reach for their wallet because they think they have no choice. But right there, in the first 5 seconds, the entire encounter can change based on what you say next. So what do? Can police legally demand ID from anyone? Can refusing get you arrested? And what exact words should you say before answering any questions? Because one sentence can protect your rights or accidentally waive them. Here's a situation most people never think about. When an officer asks for ID, there are actually different kinds of police encounters, and the type of encounter matters more than almost anything else. Maybe you're driving a car. Maybe you're walking down the street. Maybe you're standing outside a store. Maybe police are investigating something nearby. The law can change depending on the situation and the state you're in. That's why people get trapped. They assume every police request is automatically a legal order. Sometimes it is, sometimes it is not. And if you start talking too fast, volunteering information, or arguing emotionally, you can accidentally make things worse very quickly. So in this video, you're going to learn the safest framework. If knowing your rights matters to you, subscribe now. Share this with someone who needs it and drop your opinion below. Let's go. You will learn what officers are often trying to establish during an ID request. You'll learn the common mistakes people make. You'll learn the exact phrase you should calmly say before answering questions. And you'll learn how to protect yourself without escalating the situation. First, understand this. Police asking for ID is not always about the ID itself. Sometimes they are trying to identify a suspect. Sometimes they are checking for warrants. Sometimes they are fishing for inconsistencies in your answers. Sometimes they are trying to extend the encounter long enough to develop reasonable suspicion. That's why your first mistake is usually talking too much. An officer says, "Can I see your ID?" And the person immediately starts rambling. Why? What did I do? I'm just coming from my friend's house. I live nearby. I didn't do anything wrong. That is exactly how people accidentally talk themselves into longer investigations. Instead, stay calm. Keep your hands visible. Don't make sudden movements. And say this first. "Officer, am I being detained or am I free to go?" That sentence matters because it forces clarity. You are respectfully asking whether this is a voluntary encounter or a detention. And legally, that distinction matters. If the officer says, "You're free to go," then the safest option is usually to leave calmly and silently. Not argue, not lecture the officer, not stay there trying to prove a point. Just leave. But if the officer says you are being detained, now the situation changes. Now you know the officer is claiming legal authority to temporarily hold you, and that leads to the next major mistake people make. They confuse silence with resistance. Watch how this usually goes. "Officer, what's your name?" Person, "I know my rights. I'm not telling you anything." Officer, "Why are you getting aggressive?" That tone shift alone can escalate the encounter. Instead, stay controlled and professional. Say, "I choose to remain silent." Short, calm, clear. Not hostile, not emotional, not argumentative. Those words work because you are explicitly invoking your constitutional right instead of accidentally waiving it through casual conversation. A lot of people think remaining silent just means staying quiet. But in some situations, courts have looked at silence differently unless you clearly state your intention to invoke your rights. That's why saying the words matters. Now, let's talk about the biggest confusion in these encounters. Do you actually have to provide ID? The answer depends heavily on the situation. If you are lawfully driving a vehicle, officers generally can require a driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance during a traffic stop. That's very different from walking down the street. In some states, there are stop and identify laws that may require a person to identify themselves during a lawful detention under certain circumstances. But even then, the scope of what must be provided can vary. Some states may require only your name. Others may require an ID if you have one. And in many situations, police still need lawful grounds for the detention itself. That's why you should avoid making blanket statements like, "I never have to show ID." That can go badly very fast if you misunderstand the law in your state. Instead, focus on controlled communication. Here's a safer approach. Officer, I need your ID. You, officer, are you ordering me to identify myself? That question matters because it clarifies whether the officer is making a request or a lawful order. Again, you are not arguing, you are gathering information. Then, if the officer confirms it is a lawful order, do not physically resist. That is critical. Do not pull away. Do not refuse physical commands. Do not try to litigate constitutional law on the roadside. If you believe your rights were violated, that battle happens later through complaints, attorneys, body camera footage, and courts, not during the stop. Now, here's another trap people fall into. They think being polite means giving consent. Those are not the same thing. An officer might say, "You don't mind if I check your pockets real quick, right?" Or, "Mind if I look in your bag?" A nervous person often says yes automatically because they want to. Notice what it does not say. It does not insult the officer. It does not physically interfere. It does not threaten anyone. It simply makes your position legally clear. And if a search happens anyway, your statement may later become important evidence that the search was non-consensual. Now let's talk about body language. Because officers are constantly evaluating behavior. Fast movements create danger. Reaching suddenly into pockets creates danger. Turning aggressively creates danger. Even if your intentions are harmless, officers may interpret movements as threats, so narrate your actions calmly. "Officer, my wallet is in my right pocket. I'm reaching slowly." Those simple statements reduce misunderstanding. Another huge mistake is trying to win verbally. Some people turn every encounter into a debate. "Officer, can I see your ID?" "Person, what statute? What probable cause? What case law?" Look, knowing your rights is important, but roadside arguments rarely end the way people imagine. The goal is not to dominate the officer verbally. The goal is to leave safely while protecting your legal position. That means calm voice, minimal words, no insults, no sudden movements, and no unnecessary admissions. Because remember this, police are trained to observe inconsistencies. The more you talk, the more information you provide. And innocent people absolutely do make inconsistent statements under stress. That's another reason the phrase, "I choose to remain silent," matters so much. Now let's cover one situation people misunderstand constantly: consensual encounters. An officer may approach you and start asking questions casually. "Hey man, where are you headed? What's your name? Mind talking for a second?" Many people assume they are not allowed to leave, but if you are not detained, you may be free to walk away. That is why the question, "Am I free to go?" is so important. It cuts through confusion immediately. And if the answer is yes, leave calmly. Do not argue about rights while walking away. And definitely do not re-engage after you leave. Now, there's another phrase you should know in case the encounter escalates. If police begin using force or trying to physically control you, do not physically fight, even if you believe that the tension is unlawful. Instead, say, "I am not resisting, but I do not consent." That sentence can matter later because it separates non-compliance from physical resistance. Again, this is not magic language. No phrase guarantees a perfect outcome, but clear, calm statements can reduce confusion and preserve important legal protections. And remember something very important. The roadside is not the courtroom. People get emotionally trapped because they feel disrespected, embarrassed, or angry. That emotional reaction causes bad decisions. Yelling, arguing, sarcasm, sudden movements, refusing lawful commands. All of that increases risk immediately. Your objective is simple. Stay safe, stay calm, say less, do not consent unnecessarily, and preserve your rights for later. Now let's talk briefly about lawyers. If questioning becomes serious, clearly invoke your right to counsel. Say, "I want to speak to a lawyer." Then stop talking. A common mistake is saying, "Maybe I should get a lawyer." That can be interpreted differently than a direct request. Be clear, be calm. And once you invoke your rights, stop volunteering information afterward, because many people undo their own protection by continuing to talk. Finally, understand that laws vary by state and situation. Traffic stops are different from pedestrian stops. School zones are different from airports. State identification laws vary. And the legality of a detention often depends on very specific facts. So this video is educational information, not personal legal advice. But the overall framework is consistent almost everywhere. When police ask for ID, do not panic, do not argue, do not volunteer information unnecessarily. First, establish the situation. Am I being detained or am I free to go? If you choose to remain silent, say it clearly. I choose to remain silent. If you do not consent to searches, say so calmly. I do not consent to any searches. If things escalate legally, request counsel directly. I want to speak to a lawyer. And above all else, comply with lawful physical commands while protecting your rights verbally and calmly, because the safest encounters are usually the ones where emotions stay low, movements stay controlled, and words stay precise. And in the next video, we're going to break down the single biggest mistake drivers make during traffic stops when officers say, "Step out of the vehicle." Thank you for watching till the end. See you in the next video.